Even if he takes his billions with him, the Libyan people will welcome that, because that will spare a lot of bloodshed. But I want to say that the ICC ruling is more targeted, in my opinion, towards those who are in the inner circle around Colonel Gaddafi. It is those that we're trying to talk to. We're trying to tell them that, look, this is a sinking ship. Don't sink with it. Do something. Stop this. You can do that, or else you will be taken to the International Crimes Court.
Is exile really the answer, though? I mean, there are those who say that even if he moves into exile, what's to guarantee he won't still try to intervene and influence the situation in Libya?
Well, once he's out, and once his family is out, they will really have limited ability to do anything. Let's get him out, and let's deal with whatever comes after that.
We'll go over to Mark. From a legal perspective, I guess, is there perhaps, I think Sammy wants to jump in. I'll let you jump in first there with a quick rebuttal there, I think.
Yeah, I just want to know, it's not a rebuttal, it's just that the problem with trying to get to his loyalists is the fact that they've already involved in crimes. And so, you know, I'm not so sure. I mean, I agree with everything that was said by Mohammed, but at the same time, I'm not so sure that they're going to defect, having already committed different crimes. And so, you know, that also is a question to be asked.
So you don't think the ICC action will be helpful even in encouraging defections in the circle around Gaddafi?
No, I don't. I mean, we haven't seen it yet, and I don't see it happening.
All right, let's go over to Mark if we can. From a legal perspective, is there some sort of contradiction here between what the Security Council seem to be saying about prosecution or investigation and what we've heard from some US officials that no, exile still is on the table?
Well, exile should not be on the table. I'm going to disagree with my two esteemed colleagues on this and take a very firm position that we have moved international justice now to a point where there's been a paradigm shift. And that paradigm shift is quite clear now. If you engage in these types of acts and these types of crimes, you are going to be held accountable. This is what the international community has said. There is no impunity for these actors.
But and Mark, I think the point which, how do you respond? The point which I think they and some people make is that if you give them a way out, perhaps you can stop these crimes from happening.
But
rather than trying to let it happen and then call into account.
Yes, I understand that, and I understand the argument, but I think it's a false argument. I don't think that there's any evidence to suggest that a dictator, those in leadership that has committed these crimes, somehow just kind of disappears. Charles Taylor is a good example from Liberia. That was attempted with Charles Taylor's to kind of move him, put him in exile, but he didn't stop his engagement in the region in support of further atrocities. Slobodan Milosevic, the same situation. What is needed is a clear position that states to the individuals that you're going to be held accountable. Why should we in any way suggest, to Colonel Gaddafi that we're somehow going to put him to exile and we may or may not bring him to justice later on? That's the contradiction. That's the conflict international, and that's what has to be stopped.
Sammy, you started this point, so your response to that, in a sense, by saying that you've always got the exile option open there, does it have the effect of encouraging him to try every option? Stay, fight for as long as you can, and if at the end of the day that doesn't work and you can't kill enough opponents, there's always exile.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, this is the thing here is that there are people dying at the moment, and how do we end this conflict, and how do we end it without you know, shifting the you know, sort of the saviors become the international community.
By fear of accountability? I mean, we have seen some defections, haven't we? Can't any of those be attributed to the international pressure?
Right, but I think at the moment we we have to try to find a way to get him either, as I said, captured or sent into exile, and then at that moment you can get the Libyan people to raise the case, to take him, refer him to the ICC, to do to put the pressure to bring him to justice, and I think you know, I think with the world's consensus at the moment, I think in this case, as opposed to, let's say, the Charles Taylor and the other cases that were given, in this case there is international consensus, and I think there is the possibility through campaigning that we could then bring him to trial. But at the same time, you know, in the same sense, when we say ICC referral, we're referring to the ICC and an investigation. What we're saying is also this: we're going to have this long, drawn-out investigation. In the meantime, Gaddafi can do what he wants and can kill as he pleases. So I'm not sure.
Okay, gentlemen, I think you've both made your points very well. If I can go back to Mark for a second, what happens to the ICC case if indeed a deal on exile is cut?
Well, a deal and an exile or some type of deal will not in any way deter the ICC, because the ICC now has a mandate to investigate, which is what the prosecutor is doing. I think the prosecutor will take a relatively short period of time because of what I said about the standard of proof. But it would be absolutely hypocrisy if, for whatever reason, the international community now said, yes, we've created this international criminal court. The UN Security Council has unanimously made the decision to refer the case, but then we're just going to give him exile. If that's the case, let's be frank about this. Let's just close down any principle or any concept of international justice, because you can't have it both ways. You cannot give a position or an ideal to leaders that they can go ahead and commit these atrocities and then later on find themselves to negotiate a pass to allow them to go into exile. It can't be that way. There has to be a firm position on this. And a leader is, I assure you, Colonel Gaddafi is not sitting there deciding whether he's going to continue to fight on because of an ICC indictment. There are many of other reasons. The ICC doesn't have that type of power. But by principle, by saying clearly that international justice requires accountability for these atrocities, that's the principle that we have to
I can already see Mohammed shaking his head, so I want to bring him into the discussion now.
Yes, but that has already happened. I mean, Colonel Gaddafi has been bombed by America, has been called a mad dog. There were sanctions against him. The whole world saw his atrocities in Lockerbie, in St. James Square, and still they embraced him. Tony Blair shook hands with him. Condoleezza Rice went to visit him in his tent. So the political position is hypocritical anyway.
All right, Mohammed, you made that point very briefly. Mark, can you respond to that point very briefly now?
If there was a process at that time, which it would not have been under the ICC because it was not relevant at that time, but had international justice existed at that time where they could have indicted Colonel Gaddafi back then for the atrocities committed, I'm not sure we would be here right now discussing this, because I think Gaddafi would have been dealt with. That was the missing link.
Okay, I'm trying to shift gears a little bit. Mohammed, if we talk about principles of justice, as Mark is doing, should we also talk about accountability of perhaps other countries, not only Muammar Gaddafi and his circle? I mean, some say when you have plane loads of mercenaries taking off from African states heading for Libya, somebody in those African countries must know about this and must be complicit in it.